The transport ship shuddered as it entered the atmosphere of Kithvar Prime. Marcus Chen pressed his face against the small window, watching the gray landscape below. Red dust swirled in violent storms across the barren surface. This would be his home now. His prison. The chains around his wrists felt heavier with each passing moment. 3 months ago, he had been a sergeant in the Human Defense Corps, fighting the Zephyrian Empire on the Outer Rim worlds. Now he was just another prisoner of war, heading to the most feared prison planet in known space. The ship landed with a bone-jarring thud. Guards in dark armor shouted orders in harsh Zephyrian voices. Marcus didn't understand their language, but the message was clear enough. Move, follow, obey. The prison complex rose from the red soil like a massive black tumor. Walls of dark metal stretched high into the dusty sky. Guard towers dotted the perimeter, their weapons tracking the new arrivals. Marcus counted 30 other prisoners being herded from the ship. Humans, mostly. But he spotted a few other species he recognized from the war. The processing center smelled of fear and disinfectant. Zephyrian guards moved between the prisoners with cold efficiency. These aliens stood nearly 8 feet tall, their bodies covered in dark chitinous plates that clicked when they moved. 6 arms made them look like giant insects, and their black eyes showed no emotion Marcus could understand. A guard shoved Marcus into a line. Papers were stamped. Numbers were assigned. He became prisoner 7749. The number was burned into a metal tag that was welded to his wrist. The hot metal made him bite back a scream. The dormitory was a long, narrow building with rows of metal bunks. 50 prisoners shared the space. The air was thick and stale. Marcus found an empty bunk near the back and sat down heavily. His body ached from the journey and the rough handling of the guards. First time here? The voice came from the bunk below his. Marcus looked down to see a middle-aged human with graying hair and tired eyes. Scars covered his arms and face. Yeah, Marcus replied quietly. Name's Rodriguez. Been here 2 years. The man's voice was flat, empty of hope. Few things you need to know if you want to survive. First, never look the guards in the eyes. They see it as a challenge. Second, fights happen every day in the arena. Sometimes you don't get a choice about participating. Third, stay away from the hybrids. Hybrids? Rodriguez spat on the floor. Mixed breeds. Half alien, half human. Products of the last war, when some humans got too friendly with the enemy. The Zephyrians keep them here because they don't want them in regular society. Neither do we. Marcus wanted to ask more questions, but an alarm sounded. All around him, prisoners stood up quickly. Marcus followed their lead. Mealtime, Rodriguez muttered. Stick close to me. Learn the routine. The cafeteria was a massive hall filled with long metal tables. Hundreds of prisoners sat in groups eating gray paste from metal bowls. Marcus noticed that different species sat separately. Humans with humans. The few Altarians clustered together at one table. Other alien species formed their own small groups. In one corner, Marcus saw something that made him stop walking. A small figure sat alone at an empty table. At first glance, it looked like a human child, maybe 8 or 9 years old. But the skin had a slight greenish tint and the arms were longer than they should be. The child's face had human features, but the eyes were larger and completely black, like a Zephyrian's. That's one of them, Rodriguez whispered, noticing Marcus staring. Half-breed. Kid's been here 6 months. Nobody talks to it. Nobody sits with it. Better that way. Marcus got his bowl of paste and followed Rodriguez to a table with other humans, but his eyes kept drifting back to the child sitting alone. The kid was small and thin, like he wasn't getting enough food. His clothes were too big and torn in several places. Why is a child here? Marcus asked quietly. Because it's not really a child, said another prisoner, a large man with mean eyes named Thompson. It's an abomination. Product of some human traitor who spread her legs for the enemy. Thing shouldn't exist. Marcus felt anger rise in his chest, but he kept quiet. He was new here. He needed to learn the rules before he started breaking them. Over the next few days, Marcus learned about life in the prison. Every morning, guards would select prisoners for work details. Mining in the underground tunnels. Maintaining the prison systems. Cleaning the guard quarters. The work was hard and dangerous. Afternoons were the worst. That's when the fights happened. The Zephyrians had built an arena in the center of the prison complex. Prisoners were forced to fight each other while guards and sometimes visiting officials watched from above. The fights usually weren't to the death, but injuries were common. Medical care was basic at best. Marcus managed to avoid the arena for his first week, but he knew his luck wouldn't last. He also kept watching the hybrid child. The kid was always alone. During meals, he sat by himself. During work details, he was given jobs that kept him away from other prisoners. During free time, he would sit in a corner reading an old book, trying to stay invisible. The other prisoners made sure he knew he wasn't wanted. They would accidentally bump into him, spilling his food. They would take his work tools, making his jobs harder. They would whisper insults when he passed by. The child never fought back. He just endured it all with quiet dignity that reminded Marcus of something. It reminded him of his little sister back on Earth. She had died in the first Zephyrian attack on the colonies. She had been about the same age as this hybrid child. On his 8th day in the prison, Marcus was eating lunch when he noticed a group of 5 human prisoners surrounding the hybrid child's table. Thompson was leading them, his face twisted with anger. "You don't belong here, freak," Thompson was saying loudly. "Your alien daddy killed my squad on Proxima Station. Time someone paid for that." The child looked up at them with those large black eyes but said nothing. His small hands gripped his spoon tightly. "Look at those eyes," another prisoner spat. "Just like the bugs that killed our friends. Makes me sick." Thompson reached across the table and knocked the child's bowl to the floor. Gray paste splattered everywhere. "Oops," he said with a cruel smile. "Looks like you're not eating today." The child bent down to clean up the mess. Thompson put his boot on the kid's hand, pressing down hard. The child winced but didn't cry out. "Maybe we should teach this thing what happens to enemy spawn," Thompson said. The other men nodded, moving closer. Marcus looked around the cafeteria. Other prisoners were watching but doing nothing. Some seemed to approve. Others looked uncomfortable but unwilling to get involved. The guards were nowhere to be seen. The child was just a kid. Yes, he was half alien. Yes, his other parent had been the enemy. But he was still just a frightened child who had never hurt anyone. Marcus thought of his sister. He thought of what she would want him to do. He stood up. "Leave him alone," Marcus said clearly. The cafeteria went quiet. Every eye turned to look at him. Thompson and his group turned around, surprised. "What did you say, new guy?" Thompson asked, his voice dangerous. Marcus walked slowly toward them. His heart was pounding, but his voice was steady. "I said leave him alone. He's just a kid." Thompson laughed, but it wasn't a pleasant sound. "This thing isn't a kid. It's an alien monster that looks like a kid, and you just made a very bad mistake." The first punch caught Marcus in the stomach. He doubled over, gasping for air. The second hit his face, splitting his lip. Thompson and his friends surrounded him, fists and boots flying. Marcus tried to fight back, but 5 against 1 was impossible. He covered his head and tried to protect his vital organs. Through the pain, he heard the hybrid child calling for help, his small voice echoing in the silent cafeteria. But Marcus didn't regret his choice. Some things were worth taking a beating for. Protecting an innocent child was one of them, no matter what species that child was. When the beating finally stopped, Marcus lay on the floor, tasting blood. Through swollen eyes, he saw the hybrid child kneeling beside him, tears streaming down his small face. "Why?" the child whispered. "Why did you help me?" Marcus managed a painful smile. "Because it was the right thing to do." High above in the observation deck, unseen by the prisoners below, Commander Takara watched the security footage with growing amazement. In all her years of military service, she had never seen such an act of selfless courage. This human had risked everything to protect her son who was half human himself. For the first time in months, Takara felt something she had almost forgotten: hope. Marcus woke up in the prison medical bay 3 days later. His body felt like it had been hit by a transport ship. Every breath hurt. His left eye was swollen shut and his ribs ached when he moved. But he was alive. A Zephyrian medical drone hovered nearby, scanning his injuries with blue light. The machine beeped and moved on to the next patient. Marcus tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Pain shot through his chest. "Don't move too much," a small voice said beside him. "You have 3 broken ribs and a concussion." Marcus turned his head carefully. The hybrid child was sitting in a chair next to his bed. The kid looked cleaner than before, and someone had given him new clothes that actually fit. "What are you doing here?" Marcus asked. His voice came out as a rough whisper. "I asked the guards if I could visit you," the child said. "They said yes. I think they were surprised that anyone would want to." Marcus studied the kid's face. Up close, the human features were more obvious. The shape of his nose, the way he smiled. But those large black eyes were definitely Zephyrian. It was like looking at two different species trying to exist in one small body. "What's your name?" Marcus asked. "Kex," the child replied. "My mother named me. She said it means hope in the old Zephyrian language. I'm Marcus. I know. I heard the guards talking about you. They said you were stupid for helping me. They said humans are supposed to hate Zephyrians." Marcus managed a weak smile. "Maybe I am stupid, but I don't think it's wrong to help someone who needs it, no matter what they look like." Kex was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "My mother is Zephyrian. My father was human. They met during a peace conference 5 years ago. The peace didn't last very long. Where are your parents now?" "My father died in the fighting." "My mother," Kex's voice trailed off. "She's still alive, but she can't acknowledge me. Having a hybrid child destroyed her career. Her own people see me as evidence of her weakness and betrayal." Marcus felt a surge of anger, not at the child, but at a system that would punish an innocent kid for the circumstances of his birth. "That's not fair." "Fair doesn't exist in war," Kex said with wisdom that seemed too old for his young face. "I learned that a long time ago." Over the next 2 weeks, as Marcus recovered from his injuries, Kex visited him every day. The child was intelligent and curious, asking endless questions about human culture and customs. In return, he taught Marcus basic Zephyrian words and explained how their technology worked. Marcus learned that Kex could understand both languages perfectly, but most prisoners avoided talking to him. The Zephyrian guards treated him with cold indifference. The human prisoners saw him as the enemy. Kex existed in a lonely space between two worlds belonging to neither. But there was something else Marcus noticed. Small things that didn't quite make sense. Kex always seemed to know when the guards were coming before they appeared. He knew which work details would be the safest. He had information about prison routines that most prisoners took months to learn. "How do you know so much about what goes on here?" Marcus asked one day. Kex looked uncomfortable. "I pay attention. I listen. It's more than that, isn't it?" The child was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, "Someone makes sure I'm safe. They change my work assignments to keep me away from the dangerous jobs. They make sure I get enough food. They watch out for me." "Who?" "I don't know for sure. But I think it's someone important. Someone with authority." Marcus thought about this as he healed. When he was finally released from the medical bay, he noticed other small changes. His work assignments were lighter than before. During meal times, Thompson and his group kept their distance. Marcus was assigned to cleaning duty in the administrative areas of the prison, far from the dangerous mining work. Someone was protecting him too. The prison had a library of sorts, a small room with old books and data tablets in various languages. Marcus started spending his free time there reading and thinking. Kex would join him, and they would sit quietly together sharing books. It was there that Marcus first noticed her. Commander Thakara would sometimes walk past the library window during her inspections. She was tall even for a Zephyrian, with dark green chitinous plates and 4 arms instead of the usual 6. Her uniform marked her as high-ranking military. But what struck Marcus most was the way she would slow down when passing the library. The way her black eyes would linger on Kex. There was something in her gaze that Marcus recognized. It was the same look his own mother used to give him when she thought he wasn't watching. Protective, loving, worried. "Kex," Marcus said quietly one day as they sat reading. "That Zephyrian officer who walks by sometimes. Do you know who she is?" Kex tensed up. He glanced toward the window, then back at his book. "Commander Thakara. She's in charge of prisoner security. She looks at you differently than the other guards do. I don't know what you mean." But Marcus could see the truth in the child's eyes. "She's your mother, isn't she?" Kex's small hands gripped his book tightly. For a moment, Marcus thought the kid might cry. Then he nodded slowly. "She can't acknowledge me," Kex whispered. "If the other Zephyrians knew she was protecting her hybrid son, it would be seen as weakness. She could be court-martialed or worse, but she does protect you. From a distance, she makes sure I'm safe without anyone knowing why. She thinks I don't realize it's her, but I do." A child always knows his mother. Marcus felt his heart break a little. Here was a mother who loved her child but couldn't show it. A child who knew he was loved but couldn't return it openly. And all because of politics and prejudice. "She's been protecting me too, hasn't she?" Marcus asked. Kex nodded. After you helped me, she started making sure you were safe as well. She sees you as important. Important how? I think she sees you as proof that not all humans are enemies. That maybe there's hope for understanding between our species. That evening, Marcus lay on his bunk thinking about everything he had learned. Thompson and his friends had left him alone since the beating, but he could feel their anger simmering. Other prisoners watched him with suspicion. Some seemed to respect what he had done. Others saw him as a traitor for protecting an alien child, but Marcus didn't regret his choice. If anything, getting to know Kex had convinced him that he had done the right thing. The child was intelligent, kind, and curious about the world. He was also lonely and scared, trying to find his place in a universe that seemed determined to reject him. Marcus understood that feeling. He was starting to feel like an outsider among his own species, too. The next morning brought unexpected news. Guards announced that there would be a special event in the arena that afternoon. A combat demonstration for visiting officials. Prisoners would be selected to participate. Marcus felt his stomach drop when his number was called. As he was led toward the arena, he saw Kex watching from the prisoner viewing area. The child looked terrified. Marcus tried to give him a reassuring smile, but he wasn't feeling very confident himself. The arena was packed with Zephyrian officials and guards. High above in the command viewing box, Marcus could see Commander Thakara standing with other senior officers. Her black eyes found his across the distance. For just a moment, their gazes met. Marcus saw something in her expression that surprised him. It wasn't the cold indifference he expected from an enemy officer. It was concern, maybe even fear. She was worried about him. This alien mother was worried about the human who had protected her child. The arena gates opened, and Marcus stepped onto the sand, wondering what he had gotten himself into. But he knew one thing for certain: win or lose, he had already changed something important in this place. He had shown that enemies could become something more than enemies, if someone was brave enough to take the first step. Above in the command box, Thakara gripped the railing with all four hands, her chitinous plates clicking with tension. She had been watching this human for weeks, studying his behavior, trying to understand what made him different from the others. Now she was about to find out what he was truly made of. And despite everything her military training told her, she found herself hoping that Marcus Chen would survive what was coming next. The arena floor was covered in red sand that stuck to everything. Marcus gripped the practice sword they had given him and tried to calm his racing heart. Across from him stood a Zephyrian prisoner, bigger and stronger, with two real swords clutched in his four hands. The crowd of Zephyrian officials cheered from the viewing boxes above. This was entertainment for them. Life and death reduced to a show. Marcus had fought in the war, but this was different. In battle, he had backup, strategy, proper weapons. Here he was alone with a dull blade against an enemy designed by evolution to be a perfect killing machine. The Zephyrian prisoner charged. Marcus dodged left, feeling the wind from the alien's blade as it passed inches from his face. The crowd roared approval. They wanted blood. For 20 minutes, Marcus fought for his life. His human speed and flexibility kept him alive against his opponent's superior strength. He scored several minor hits, drawing green blood from the Zephyrian's arms and legs. But he was tiring fast. Then disaster struck. Marcus stumbled on the loose sand and fell. The Zephyrian raised all four swords for the killing blow. "Stop!" The voice came from the command viewing box, amplified across the arena. Everyone froze. Marcus looked up to see Commander Thakara standing at the railing, her forearms raised in the gesture that meant, "Cease combat." "This demonstration is concluded," she announced in perfect human standard. "The prisoner has shown adequate skill. Return him to his cell." The Zephyrian officials looked confused. Arena matches usually continued until one fighter couldn't continue. But no one questioned the commander's authority. As guards escorted Marcus from the arena, he caught Thakara's eye again. She gave him the slightest nod, so brief that anyone watching would think they imagined it. But Marcus understood. She had just saved his life. 3 days later, the prison erupted into chaos. It started in the mining section. A support beam had collapsed, trapping 12 prisoners underground. The automated systems failed and poisonous gas began leaking into the tunnels. Guards stood around arguing about protocols while men died below. Marcus didn't think. He grabbed a breathing mask and rope from the emergency station and headed for the mine entrance. Other prisoners followed his lead. They formed a human chain into the darkness, passing unconscious bodies up to safety. Kex appeared beside him, small hands helping to guide the rescue rope. "I can fit into smaller spaces," the child said. "Let me help." Together they crawled through collapsed sections that the larger prisoners couldn't navigate. Kex's night vision, inherited from his Zephyrian mother, helped them find victims in the absolute darkness. They saved 11 men. One human died before they could reach him. But the rescue effort had a cost. The mine's structural damage spread. A massive section collapsed, trapping Marcus, Kex, and 6 other prisoners in a small air pocket deep underground. The ceiling above them groaned ominously. "The support won't hold much longer," gasped Rodriguez, who had been one of the trapped miners. "Maybe 30 minutes before this whole section comes down." Marcus looked around their small prison. The walls were solid rock. The ceiling was held up by damaged metal beams that sparked and bent under the weight above. No way out except the tunnel they had come through, which was now completely blocked. "We're going to die down here," whispered another prisoner. Kex was examining something in the corner of their trapped space. "There's an old maintenance shaft here," he said. "It's very small, but it might lead to the upper levels." Marcus crawled over to look. The shaft was barely wide enough for a child. An adult would never fit. "Even if you could get through," Marcus said to Kex, "you'd be alone up there. The guards won't believe you. They won't mount a rescue for human prisoners." "They will if my mother orders it," Kex said quietly. The other prisoners stared at him. "What did you say?" Rodriguez asked. Kex looked at Marcus with frightened eyes. Marcus nodded encouragingly. The truth was going to come out anyway. "Commander Thekara is my mother," Kex said. "She'll listen to me if I can reach her." The revelation hit the trapped men like a physical blow. Rodriguez cursed under his breath. Another prisoner, a young man named Davies, looked angry. "You're the offspring of the enemy commander?" Davies said. "She's been watching us this whole time through you?" "It's not like that," Marcus said quickly. "Kex has been helping us. He's the reason some of us are still alive." "He's a spy," Davies spat, feeding information to his alien mother. "He's a child," Marcus shot back. "And right now, he's our only hope of getting out of here alive." The ceiling groaned again. Dust and small rocks fell on their heads. "We don't have time for this," Marcus said. "Kex, can you make it through that shaft?" The child nodded. "I think so. But even if I reach the surface, will she help? Will she risk her position to save human prisoners?" Marcus looked into those large black eyes that reminded him so much of his sister. "There's only one way to find out. But remember, whatever happens, you're braver than you know." Kex squeezed into the maintenance shaft and disappeared into the darkness above. The men waited in tense silence, listening to the ominous sounds of the mine continuing to collapse around them. 20 minutes passed. Then they heard it, the sound of heavy machinery moving above them. Drilling, digging, rescue equipment. "Someone's coming," Rodriguez whispered, hardly daring to believe it. It took another hour, but finally they saw lights piercing through the darkness. Zephyrian rescue workers with proper equipment broke through the debris. Within minutes, all 7 trapped prisoners were pulled to safety. Marcus was the last one out. As he emerged into the prison courtyard, dirty and exhausted, he saw a crowd gathered around the mine entrance. Prisoners, guards, and officials all mixed together in the chaos of the rescue operation. At the center of it all stood Commander Thekara, directing the rescue efforts with military precision. When she saw Marcus emerge, their eyes met across the crowd. For a moment, the mask of professional indifference slipped from her face. Marcus saw relief, concern, and something else. Gratitude. Then Kex broke away from a group of medics and ran to Marcus, throwing his small arms around the human's waist. "You're alive," the child said, tears streaming down his face. "Thanks to you," Marcus replied, ruffling the kid's hair. "You were very brave." Commander Thekara approached them. Up close, She was even more imposing than Marcus had realized. Nearly 8 feet tall, with chitinous plates that gleamed like polished armor. But her voice was surprisingly gentle when she spoke. "Prisoner 7749, she said formally. "Your actions today saved lives. Both human and Zephyrian rescue workers were impressed by your leadership in the emergency." "I just did what anyone would do," Marcus replied. "No," Takara said firmly. "You did what few would do. You risked your life for others without thought of reward or recognition. This is uncommon." She paused, glancing at Kex, who was still clinging to Marcus's side. "My son tells me you have been kind to him, that you protected him when others would not." The admission sent a ripple of shock through the gathered crowd. Takara had just publicly acknowledged Kex as her son, in front of prisoners, guards, and officials. It was a career-ending move, but she continued speaking, her voice growing stronger. "For too long I have allowed fear and politics to keep me from acknowledging what should be obvious to everyone. This child is my son. I am proud of him. And I am grateful to the human who showed him kindness when his own mother could not." Marcus felt the weight of hundreds of eyes on him. Some looked angry, others seemed confused. A few, mostly the prisoners who had been in the mine, looked at him with something like respect. "Commander," Marcus said carefully, "you don't need to thank me. Kex is a good kid. Anyone would have helped him." "But they did not," Takara replied. "Only you did. This tells me something important about humans that I had not understood before." She turned to address the crowd. "Today, a human prisoner risked his life to save both human and Zephyrian miners. A hybrid child showed courage beyond his years to save them all. Perhaps it is time we reconsidered some of our assumptions about enemies and allies." Later that evening, as the excitement died down, Marcus found himself in the library again. His body ached from the mine rescue, but he couldn't sleep. Too much had changed too quickly. Kex appeared in the doorway, looking uncertain. "Can I come in?" "Of course." The child sat beside him, but didn't pick up a book. "Everything's different now," Kex said quietly. "She acknowledged me in front of everyone. There's no going back." "Are you scared?" "Yes. But also relieved. I'm tired of pretending we don't know each other. Tired of watching her from a distance and acting like she's just another guard." Marcus nodded. "What happens now?" "I don't know. She'll probably face disciplinary action for having a hybrid child and for acknowledging me publicly. Her career in the military is over. She knew that when she spoke up today. She chose you over her career." Kex was quiet for a moment, then he said, "She asked me to give you a message. She wants to meet with you tomorrow, privately." Marcus felt his heart skip a beat. A private meeting with the enemy commander who had just revealed herself as the mother of the child he had protected. This could go very well or very badly. "Did she say what she wants to talk about?" Kex shook his head. "But I think she wants to offer you something. A chance for things to be different." That night Marcus lay awake thinking about everything that had happened. 6 weeks ago, the meeting took place in Commander Takara's private office, deep in the administrative section of the prison. Marcus had never seen this part of the facility before. The walls were clean, the lighting was bright, and everything spoke of authority and order. Takara sat behind a large metal desk, her 4 hands folded in front of her. Without her helmet, Marcus could see more of her alien features. Her head was elongated with small antenna-like projections above her black eyes. When she spoke, he could see sharp teeth behind thin lips, but her voice was calm and measured. "Sit, please, prisoner 7749. "Marcus," he said as he took the chair across from her. "My name is Marcus Chen." "Marcus," she repeated, testing the human word. "I asked you here because we need to talk. About my son, about this prison, about what happens next." Marcus waited for her to continue. "Since I acknowledged Kex publicly, my position here has become complicated. My superiors are not pleased that I revealed my connection to a hybrid child. They see it as a sign of weakness, evidence that I have been compromised by human influence. What does that mean for you?" It means I will be removed from command soon. Probably within the month. A new commander will be assigned to replace me. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. What kind of commander? The kind who believes that prisoners of war should be worked to death in the mines. The kind who sees hybrid children as genetic mistakes that should be corrected. Takara's voice was flat, but Marcus could hear the fear underneath. The kind who would see your protection of my son as evidence that you are both dangerous and expendable. Marcus understood immediately. You're saying that when you leave, Kex and I are dead, among others. My replacement will not share my views on prisoner treatment. Many will suffer. Marcus leaned forward in his chair. Why are you telling me this? What do you want me to do about it? Thekara stood up and walked to the window that overlooked the prison courtyard. Below, prisoners moved through their daily routines, unaware that their lives were about to change drastically. I have been thinking about what you said in the mine, she said, without turning around. That Kex is just a child who deserves protection regardless of his heritage. It made me realize something important. What's that? That I have been a coward. I have watched my son suffer in isolation because I was afraid of what acknowledging him would cost me. I have allowed other prisoners to endure conditions that violate every principle of honorable warfare, because following those principles might have hurt my career. She turned back to face him. You showed me what courage actually looks like. Not the courage to fight enemies in battle, but the courage to do what is right even when it costs you everything. Marcus remained silent, sensing that she was building up to something important. I want to offer you a choice, Takara continued. In 2 weeks, a prisoner transport ship will arrive to transfer some inmates to other facilities. I can arrange for you and several others to be on that ship. During the transfer, there will be an opportunity for escape. You're talking about helping prisoners of war escape. That's treason. Yes, she said simply. It is. Marcus stared at her. Why would you do that? Why would you risk everything? Because my son deserves a chance to grow up somewhere that he won't be hated for existing. And because I have seen enough death and suffering in this place. What about the other prisoners? The ones who don't escape? Takara's expression darkened. They will remain here under the new commander. I cannot save them all. Marcus felt his heart sink. Rodriguez, Davies, Thompson. Even the prisoners he didn't like were still human beings who didn't deserve to be worked to death in the mines. How many could escape? He asked. The transport ship has space for 30 prisoners. I can arrange for that many to be selected for transfer. Marcus did quick mental math. There were over 400 human prisoners in the facility. 30 was barely a drop in the bucket. It's not enough, he said. It is what I can offer, Takara replied. The choice is yours. You can escape with my son and 29 others, or you can all stay here and face what comes next. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, thinking through the implications. Then he asked, what happens to you? If you help us escape, your own people will know you're responsible. I will face the consequences of my actions. Court-martial, probably execution for treason. You're willing to die for this? Takara moved back to her desk and picked up a small photograph. She handed it to Marcus. The image showed her in military dress uniform, standing next to a human man in diplomatic clothing. Between them was a much younger Kex, maybe 3 years old, smiling at the camera. This was taken during the peace conference where I met Kex's father, she said softly. For 6 months we believed that our species could find a way to coexist. We were wrong about the politics, but we were right about the possibility of understanding between individuals. She took the photograph back. My son carries the genes of both our species. He is proof that we are not so different as we pretend to be. But in this galaxy torn by war, he will always be seen as an abomination by both sides unless something changes. So you want to get him to human space? I want to get him somewhere that he can choose his own future, where he can decide whether he is more human or more Zephyrian, or something entirely new. Marcus understood now. This wasn't just about saving one child. Takara was trying to give her son the chance to become a bridge between two species that had forgotten how to talk to each other instead of shooting. There's something else, Takara said. Something I have not told you about the escape plan. What? I cannot come with you. Marcus felt his stomach drop. What do you mean? Someone needs to stay behind to cover your escape. To delay pursuit. To make sure the transport ship reaches the neutral zone before the military can stop it. You're talking about a suicide mission. I am talking about doing what is necessary to ensure my son's survival. Marcus stood up quickly, anger flaring in his chest. That's insane. Kex needs his mother. You can't just abandon him. I am not abandoning him, Takara said firmly. I am giving him the gift of freedom, the chance to grow up without the shame of my failures haunting him. Your failures? You're a decorated military officer who risked everything to protect her child. How is that failure? I failed to prevent this war. I failed to protect my son from hatred and isolation. I failed to save the man I loved. Her voice cracked slightly. I will not fail to give Kex a chance at a better life. Marcus paced the small office, his mind racing. There has to be another way. Some way for you to come with us. If I disappear at the same time as the prisoners, it will be obvious that I helped them escape. The military will hunt for the transport ship immediately. You will be caught within hours. And if you stay behind, I can delay the discovery of the escape. Make it look like incompetence rather than deliberate action. Give you time to reach the neutral zone. Marcus stopped pacing and looked at her directly. Have you told Kex about this plan? Takara looked away. Not yet. He's going to hate this.
He's going to fight you on it. He is a child.
He does not understand the complexities of war and politics. He understands love, Marcus said quietly, and he understands loss. He's already lost his father. Now you want to take away his mother too? I want to give him a future, Takara said, but her voice was less certain now. Marcus sat back down, his mind working through possibilities. What if there was a way to make it look like you were captured during the escape? What if instead of staying behind to delay pursuit, you were taken as a hostage? Takara's black eyes focused on him intently. Explain. Prisoners overpower you during the transfer. Take you hostage to ensure safe passage. When you reach the neutral zone, you escape from the prisoners and request asylum. That could work, she said slowly, but it would mean giving up everything. My career, my position, my entire life among my own people. But you would be alive, and you would be with your son. Takara was quiet for a long time, considering. Finally, she said, there would be risks. If my people suspected that I was willing rather than captured, they would pursue us regardless. And there's no guarantee that the humans would grant asylum to a former enemy commander. I'll vouch for you, Marcus said. I'll tell them about everything you've done here. How you've protected prisoners, how you saved lives. You would do that? Risk your own credibility to help an enemy officer? Marcus thought about Kex sitting alone in the library, reading his books and trying to find his place in the world. He thought about all the other prisoners who would suffer under the new commander. He thought about the possibility that one act of trust might begin to heal the wounds between two species. You're not my enemy, he said. Not anymore. You're the mother of a kid I care about. You're someone who's trying to do the right thing in an impossible situation. That makes you my ally. Takara studied his face for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. Very well. We will attempt this plan together. But I want you to understand the risks. If we are caught, if this fails, we will all face execution. Not just imprisonment, death. I understand. And there is one more condition. What? If something goes wrong during the escape, if it becomes clear that the plan will fail, you must. The transport ship arrived exactly on schedule. Marcus watched from his cell window as the massive vessel settled onto the landing pad, its engines kicking up clouds of red dust. In 6 hours, 30 prisoners would board that ship. If everything went according to plan, they would never see Kethvar Prime again. If everything went wrong, they would all be dead by morning. Marcus had spent 2 weeks carefully selecting the prisoners who would escape. He chose those who had been kind to Kex, those who had shown courage during the mine rescue, and those who had the best chance of surviving the journey to human space. Rodriguez was on the list. Davies too, despite his initial anger about Kex's parentage. Even Thompson, because Marcus believed that everyone deserved a chance at freedom. The hardest part had been telling Kex about the plan. The child had listened quietly as Marcus explained what would happen. How they would overpower the guards during transfer. How his mother would be captured to ensure safe passage. How they would all escape together to human space. She's never told me she loves me, Kex had said when Marcus finished. Not once in my whole life. She's never even touched me except when I was hurt. That doesn't mean she doesn't love you, Marcus had replied. Sometimes love means keeping distance to protect the person you care about. Will things be different when we escape? Will she be able to act like my mother then? Marcus had promised him that they would be. He hoped he was right. Now, as the sun set over the prison complex, Marcus felt his nerves tightening. Everything depended on perfect timing and a little bit of luck. The 30 selected prisoners were gathered in the transport staging area. Guards checked names against lists. Weapons were distributed to the escort team. Commander Thekara supervised everything with her usual military efficiency, giving no sign that anything unusual was about to happen. Marcus caught her eye once across the crowded room. She gave him the slightest nod. Everything was ready. The prisoners were loaded into the transport ship in groups of 5. Marcus was in the second group, along with Rodriguez, Davies, Kex, and a young human engineer named Park. As they walked up the loading ramp, Marcus felt his heart pounding so hard he was sure the guards could hear it. The interior of the ship was cramped and utilitarian. 30 seats in 6 rows, with restraints designed to keep prisoners secure during transport. Zephyrian guards took positions at the front and back of the passenger compartment. Commander Thekara entered last, her 4 arms carrying a datapad and her sidearm. She looked every inch the professional military officer. Only Marcus knew that beneath her calm exterior, she was probably as nervous as he was. "Departure in 10 minutes, she announced. "This flight will take 6 hours. Prisoners will remain in their seats for the duration." The ship's engines began to spin up. Marcus felt the familiar vibration as the vessel prepared for launch. Beside him, Kex was pale but determined. The child had been assigned the seat next to Marcus as part of Thekara's careful planning. 5 minutes after takeoff, when they had cleared the planet's atmosphere and were traveling through open space, Marcus gave the signal. "Now," he shouted, unbuckling his restraints. Chaos erupted throughout the passenger compartment. The 30 prisoners had been briefed on their roles. Half of them rushed the guards at the front of the ship. The other half went for the guards at the back. It looked like a desperate, uncoordinated prison break. But Marcus had planned every detail. The attack on Thekara was carefully choreographed. Rodriguez and Davies grabbed her arms while Marcus pressed a disabled weapon to her neck. "Nobody move," Marcus shouted to the guards. "We have your commander."
"One wrong move and she dies."
The guards froze, their weapons half drawn. They had been trained to follow orders, not to think independently in crisis situations. Without clear direction from their commander, they hesitated. "Drop your weapons," Rodriguez commanded. "All of them, now." The guards looked at Thekara, who gave them a barely perceptible nod. They placed their weapons on the floor and stepped back. "Kick them over here," Davies ordered. Marcus felt the ship change course slightly. In the cockpit, the pilot was following pre-programmed emergency protocols, heading for the nearest neutral zone station instead of the original destination. "What do you want?" one of the guards asked in broken human standard. "Safe passage to the neutral zone," Marcus replied. "Your commander stays alive as long as you cooperate." For 3 hours they maintained the charade. The guards remained under control. The prisoners took turns watching them. Thekara sat in her seat with her hands bound, playing the role of captive commander perfectly. But Marcus could see the tension in her posture. Something was wrong. "Commander," he said quietly, leaning close to her. "What is it?" "Long-range sensors," she whispered back. "Military ships are following us. They launched immediately after our departure." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "That's not supposed to happen. You said they wouldn't notice for hours. Someone must have betrayed the plan. My replacement arrived early and discovered what we were doing." Through the cockpit window, Marcus could see distant lights approaching. Zephyrian military vessels, fast and heavily armed. They were still hours away from the neutral zone. "Can we outrun them?" Rodriguez asked. Thekara shook her head. "This is a prisoner transport, not a military vessel. They will catch us long before we reach safety." The mood in the ship changed instantly. Prisoners who had been celebrating their freedom moments before now faced the reality of capture and execution. "There has to be something we can do," Davies said desperately. Marcus looked around the passenger compartment, his mind racing through possibilities. Then he noticed something. One of the guards was watching their conversation with too much interest. His eyes were sharp and alert, not like someone who had been genuinely surprised by a prisoner revolt. "Which one of you is the spy?" Marcus asked suddenly. The guards looked confused. But one of them, a younger Zephyrian with fresh scarring on his armor, tensed up slightly. "You," Marcus said, pointing at him. "You knew about the plan? You reported it to command." The young guard's expression changed. The confusion disappeared, replaced by cold satisfaction. The Empire protects itself from traitors, he said in perfect human standard. Commander Thekara will face justice for her crimes. Thekara closed her eyes in pain. Lieutenant Vexstar, I trained you myself. Why? Because you have forgotten what it means to be Zephyrian, the spy replied. You chose your alien child over your duty to the Empire. You chose these human prisoners over your own species. I chose what was right, Thekara said quietly. You chose weakness. Marcus felt anger boiling in his chest. This young officer was willing to condemn 30 people to death because of blind loyalty to a system that valued hatred over compassion. But anger wouldn't solve their immediate problem. The military ships were getting closer, and they were still hours from safety. Can we disable their engines? Marcus asked Thekara. Force them to stop pursuing us? Not without weapons. The ship has no armaments. What about ramming them? That would destroy both ships. Everyone would die. Marcus looked at the faces around him. 30 prisoners who had dared to hope for freedom. A child who just wanted to grow up without being hated. A mother who had risked everything to save her son. An idea began forming in his mind. Desperate and probably suicidal, but possibly their only chance. What if we didn't run to the neutral zone? He said slowly. What if we went somewhere else? Where? Rodriguez asked. Marcus turned to the young engineer, Park. You know ship systems, right? Could you reprogram the navigation computer? Park nodded uncertainly. Probably. But where would we go? Anywhere in Zephyrian space is controlled by the military. Not everywhere, Marcus said. He looked at Thekara. There are asteroid fields in this system, right? Places where ships can hide? Yes, but we would be trapped there. No supplies, no fuel. Long enough to send a message to human space. Long enough for a rescue ship to reach us. Thekara considered this. It might work. The asteroid field interferes with sensors. If we could lose ourselves in there. The military ships would search for us, the spy interrupted. You cannot hide forever. We don't need forever, Marcus replied. Just long enough. For the next hour, they played a deadly game of chase through space. Park reprogrammed the navigation computer while the prisoners held the guards. The military ships grew closer, but they were approaching the asteroid field. The transport ship dove into the maze of floating rocks, just as the first military vessel came within weapons range. Laser fire lit up the space around them, but the pilot was skilled, weaving between asteroids too quickly for the larger ships to follow safely. They found a hiding place in the shadow of a massive asteroid, engines powered down to minimum. The ship went dark and silent. Outside, they could see the lights of the searching military vessels. But the asteroids blocked their sensors, and the transport ship was too small to detect in the interference. Marcus helped Park send an encrypted message toward human space, a simple distress call with their location and a request for rescue. How long before help arrives? Kex asked quietly. If they send a fast ship immediately, maybe 8 hours, Marcus replied. And how long before they find us here? Marcus didn't answer. They all knew it was a race against time.